I bring everybody's attention to how he acted in the theater, because then what does he say on his way out?
Yeah, it's funny. He just kills a policeman. Tippett is still lying on the ground, and now he's saying, I protest this police brutality after he just murdered a father, police officer, struck another one, pulled out a gun, and tried to kill McDonald and anyone else that was trying to apprehend him. Now all of a sudden, now he's out in the public. Oh, I protest this police brutality. I'm not resisting arrest. He's just playing it. Peter?
Pardon me, Sean. How many footnotes?
I think it's over 330 footnotes to it.
Wow.
But you have to, because then there's no credibility. You have to be, if you can't prove it didn't happen. So if you didn't document it, it did not happen. So I document exactly where I get everything from.
Quorum Radio, baby.
So he's panicking. What's he going to do? He's trying to figure it out as he's reloading, as he's going through all these thoughts in his mind. Now people are coming up. People are starting to follow him at a distance. And now more phone calls are coming in. And now he knows the police will be there any minute. And I think he's nervous now. And his world is starting to crash around him. And then he sees the solace of a theater. He can't stick around and wait to pay for it, because every second that he's outside in public gives the police the opportunity to recognize him, or a crowd to subdue him, or whatever it might be. He's got to go in there and he's got to hide, and he's got to kind of wait this thing out.
Right. So he goes into first a shoe store, then he's kind of like spotted. That's one of the key things, that the person in the shoe store is one of the heroes in this, right?
But that's a good point, because you asked about what did Oswald say that kind of betrayed him to Tippett. Well, what did Oswald do that betrayed him to Johnny Brewer? Right. And it was Oswald's furtive movements, his behavior. These police cars are, lights and sirens behind him, and Oswald's he ducks in, and then he kind of looking over his shoulder and make sure the coast is clear. And he's kind of just not there for a purpose. He's there just to he's not kind of hang out. And then once the cops leave, he's gone. That kind of behavior betrayed him to Johnny Brewer, just like whatever Tippett asked him, whatever Oswald's answers were, betrayed Oswald. So he clearly was there to not be seen. He ducked in out of sight. He can't stay there. If there's an employee there, man, a theater is right there. And
how far away is it, by the way, Sean, the shoe store from the theater?
I think it's only a few stores down.
Okay. Right, so he goes in there, and I noticed that you spent a pretty significant amount of attention to the movie theater itself, what happened, what he said, and what he did. Because there's a contrast there. They don't go along. They're kind of like dissonant.
Man, he's divorcing himself. When I speak of people being divorced from reality, people can divorce themselves from reality, and that's what Oswald was trying to do. Once he pulls out a pistol and tries to pull the trigger, and of course people dispute that, but that's what he pulled he pulled his gun out. I've had a gun pulled on me several times as a cop. Luckily, I didn't get shot, but it's happened to me. People don't pull guns out to say, "Look at my nice shiny gun." People pull guns out to kill you. That's the only reason why you're going to do that in a situation like that. Luckily, they got the drop on him. Yeah, they hit him. They knocked him around a little bit. But when you pull out a gun, you have deadly force. There are no rules.
Right, and my understanding is that at some point they turn on the lights, right?
They do, absolutely. And then also gets up and goes back to his seat. Now he's thinking, okay, the cops are coming, right? The cops are coming. And what's he going to do? He's got his hand on his revolver, and he's going to stand up. And what he did was he did a distractor technique. So he hit Officer McDonald, who was the closest officer to him. He hit Officer McDonald with one hand to distract him and knock him off balance using a distractor technique. And then he pulls out his revolver with another hand and tries to shoot him. Luckily, he had officers behind him on the sides and the front, and then he was surrounded, and he was subdued eventually. But Oswald was going to pop up a few more rounds, and could kill some officers, some innocent civilians, some patrons in the theater. He didn't care. Yeah. But the police exercised better restraint than Oswald did, and they took him in alive.
No, I think, see, my point in that about the lights is that it wasn't. They thought that he pulled the gun. They saw him pull the gun.
Right? And that's a good point. In my book, I document and I source everything that I said. You get a lot of conspiracy books that will say, oh, so-and-so said this, or someone, or there's a rumor this. No. Whatever I say, you can go straight to that source, and it's a prime source citation. So
How many,
what happened in the
many,
theater?
pardon me, Sean, how many footnotes?
I think it's over 330 footnotes to it.
Wow.
But you have to, because then there's no credibility. You can say, oh, well, I heard that so-and-so said this. That's absolutely irrelevant. You have to be, if you can't prove it, it didn't happen. So if you didn't document it, it did not happen. So I document exactly where I get everything from.
Oswald was apprehended, surrounded by how many law enforcement people?
Oh, there were
Between
dozens there.
detectives and
But yeah,
patrolmen.
detectives, there's plainclothes, there's an FBI agent, nightmare.
Right. I bring everybody's attention to how he acted in the theater, because then what does he say on his way out?
Yeah, it's funny. He just kills a policeman, but is still lying on the ground, and now he's saying, "Oh, I protest this police brutality," after he just murdered a father, police officer, struck another one, pulled out a gun, and tried to kill McDonald and anyone else that was trying to apprehend him. Now all of a sudden, now he's out in the public. Oh, I protest this police brutality. I'm not resisting arrest. He's just not ashamed of what he did.
How many witnesses were there, by the way? That because my understanding is that when he shot Tippett, there were witnesses, right, that saw him.
There were, and others have come forward since then. I guess Dale Meyer's work does a great job in identifying some of these. He was identified by more than half a dozen witnesses eventually. You got Scoggins. Some people were afraid to, like Helen Markham was afraid to identify. She passed out. She was a very hysterical kind of person. So you have these different personalities, but they're absolutely 100% identified. That's Lee Harvey Oswald. And one of them passed within 15 feet of him. As he was driving through the intersection, he witnessed Oswald, and then he heard the shots. He stopped. Oswald started running towards him. He kind of moved his car, kept on going, and he goes, he was within 15 feet, and it was Lee Harvey Oswald. He even saw the smirk, little smile on his face. Ted Calloway, the used car dealer, saw Oswald with his pistol in what he called the raised pistol position, the barrel pointing upward, and spoke to Oswald. Oswald said something that he couldn't understand, unfortunately, and Oswald kept on going towards the direction of Jefferson. So there's no doubt it was Oswald. There are more witnesses there than there were for JFK that could positively identify Oswald, and
Right.
It is what it is.
So the interrogations. What do the interrogations tell us? And we get to the interrogations, New Orleans, and I think it was August 1963?
That's correct.
When he was arrested, when he's part of Fair Play for Cuba committee, and he got into a scuffle with some Cubans.
He did. So I do a comparative analysis of the Oswald arrest in New Orleans and then the Dallas arrest. So in New Orleans, what do you have? See, Oswald can't go back to Russia. He knows that because they got him out in the first place, and they're probably not going to let him back in. So what's the biggest better deal? It's going to be Cuba. So he's this one-man Cuban crusade, pro-Castro crusade, handing out these pamphlets. Well, eventually he gets arrested. He doesn't fight him. Oswald is not armed. He explains what he did to the police, and then he's loaded into a police car, and he's transported to the precinct. When he's there, he specifically asked to be interviewed by the FBI. And I think the reason why he asked to specifically be interviewed by an FBI agent is because I think he wanted to know what the FBI knew about him. Because he knew that keeping tabs on him. They've interviewed him before when he came back from Russia. And I think he's trying to play this cat and mouse game of what does the FBI really know about me? Wow. He's allowed to post bail. He says, nope. He doesn't want to post a bail. He's very proud of what he's done. He gets photographed and fingerprinted. He's in the system. He's interviewed by FBI. He pays his $10 fine. He's proud of what he did, and eventually he leaves the next day. Then you have Dallas, and then he's interviewed on TV, on radio and TV. Then you go to Dallas, and he's killing police officers. He's a police officer. He's armed. He attempts to kill more police officers. He does nothing but lie and fight and steal and try to get his way out of it. So, you have something that's very calm demeanor in New Orleans, and then you just have someone who's just as you can see, he's just totally opposite.
We see an Oswald who's kind of like cooperative, slightly evasive in New Orleans, right? What's your full assessment of Oswald being interrogated in New Orleans?
Yeah, you just see a complete 180. He's enjoying it, but listen, he's facing a municipal misdemeanor, right? He's not facing the death penalty. He's not facing potentially life away from his family. It's a municipal misdemeanor. It served a purpose for him to get on TV and radio and show support for Castro. So hopefully, when he goes to the embassy, he can try to get he can try to get over his way to Mexico. He's trying to fatten up his bona fides, but it didn't really work.
Curry some favor.
Yeah, and then you have a completely just deranged Oswald on Friday, November 22nd.
I noticed two things. You spoke about his interrogation. I think there are more than one. And he's evasive when it comes to talking about, well, he lied about where he got married to Marina.
Right.
Said it was Fort Worth.
Right. So in New Orleans, he testified. I mean, he spoke to FBI and goes, "Oh, I met her and we got married in Fort Worth," because he didn't want to admit, because the FBI wasn't. The FBI agent didn't let on that he knew that he was married from Russia. I don't think he knew at that time. Oh yeah, we got married in Fort Worth, and lying was Lee Harvey Oswald's calling card. That's just what he did in life. He lied about a lot of things in his life, and that continued to the day he died, except for when I articulate in my book about his dying declaration.
Right, and I want to get to that in a second because that's really good. But before that, said Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas he answers pretty quickly. He's like fairly self-assured. They were impressed with how they would ask a question, he'd answer it. But then he got evasive. And tell us about when he got invasive, when he was evasive.
Well, I mean, Oswald was well versed in being interrogated, asking questions. So he's been interviewed on radio and TV. He's been in Russia. Supposedly, he was interrogated as well and questioned. And so when he gets to, he will answer certain questions. So when he was talking to detectives, he would talk about the vehicles in Russia and the appliances, but then he'd be evasive about certain questions. Where was he in the book depository at the time? Well, he said he's on the second floor eating lunch with a couple employees who, it could be verified, were not in the lunchroom at the time. Then he said he was on the first floor. Then I published interrogation notes that Hosty wrote down, and he says that Oswald, or O as he put it, was out front watching the parade. So if that's to be believed, then we have three different versions. If you're always telling the truth, there is no, it's always going to be the same story. There's going to be no variation. You're going to remember that because it's the truth that actually happened. Oswald thought he was cocky and confident going in there. He's been interviewed by FBI agents several times in New Orleans and in Dallas. So he knows this. Yeah. Or in Fort Worth, he knows this. Of course, when he's been interrogated before, he's asked these questions. But then I think the crushing weight starts to sit in on him that, this is real. That he's not talking his way out. He's in way.
We look at the voice stress analysis. This is the thing that's really big about this book. And it's not kind of like I want to save the best for last. The other thing I want to do is his final statements after he got shot. But I don't want to do that yet.
All right, save the best for last, right?
Yeah, man. So the voice stress analysis, what does it show that's really like compelling and overwhelming?
Well, it shows a lot of great things. The one thing I found fascinating was, for conspiracy theorists and others who may be doubtful of the CVSA, well, he was nervous. Of course, it's going to show that he's stressed out. That's absolutely incorrect. So when I wrote a report as a police officer, I would write the report and think, okay, how would a defense attorney tear this apart? I shouldn't write this. I should rewrite this word because the defense attorney might tear this apart, right? I'm going to get better and better at writing reports. So I wrote this book with the conspiracy theorist in mind, or the person who's doubtful. How can I allay some of their fears? So Oswald, when he was asked, did you kill the president? This is during the midnight press conference. He goes, no, I have not been charged with that, and then goes on. Well, no shows hard block stress, because he's saying, did you kill the president? no, I have not been charged with that. And when Jerry analyzed I have not, it showed no deception. So in the same breath, it shows hard block stress on no, and then no deception on I have not, because Oswald had not been charged with Kennedy until after that midnight press conference.
But there's something else there that's really, but there's something else I want to mention, and I'm sure you've noticed this too. Not only, okay, that part is a statement of truth, but it was evasion.
It was. No, I'm not
He's not asking, have you been charged with shooting the president? No. He asked, did you shoot the president? Right?
Did you kill the president? No, I've not been charged with that. That's a perfect time to say, are you guys crazy? They have framed me. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm a I'm a common laborer. I make $1.25 an hour. They've got the wrong man. I'm so innocent. Yeah, no, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody's yet. That's a lie as well, and we know that from the interrogation. So, but then at the end of the press conference, they go, Mr. Oswald, how did you hurt your eye? And he goes, a policeman hit me. That shows absolutely no stress.
It's true.
And that's verifiable. We can prove that. So, yeah, so he lied and told the truth in the same breath. Being nervous had nothing to do with it. It doesn't register nervousness. Even in the New Orleans radio interviews, when I do the CBSA for his New Orleans radio interview, Mr. Oswald, are you a Marxist? And he replies, yes, I'm a Marxist. When we analyzed yes, that came back no deception indicated, because he was in his own mind anyways, a follower of Marx. So yeah, and then when he's giving his brief biography on the New Orleans radio interview, he was like, and that he was discharged as a buck sergeant. And the two uhs and buck sergeant, Jerry Crotty told me that virtually melted the CBSA charts. Huge hard block stress on the uhs and buck sergeant, because we all know that Oswald only attained the rank of private first class. So Oswald knew he was lying. It showed in that he was stressed out when he said it, because he knew it was a lie, and we can verify that as a lie.
Sure. So okay, good. So then we go. What any other really big lies, notable lies, besides the one you've mentioned, that were seen, that come out through the voice stress analysis?
Give me 1 second.
Or suggested by the voice stress analysis. Right.
Oh, did you shoot the president? I didn't shoot anybody. No, sir. So that was George's claim to fame, was his one analysis on the PSE, the psychological stress evaluator, of I didn't shoot anybody. No, sir. Well, on didn't and no shows hard block stress. The rest of the question doesn't. So when he has those denials, he's lying again. That's just.
How about a patsy? I'm a patsy.
Oh, that's the best one at all. So, and here's what people don't understand, or if they do, they don't want to admit it. He was saying he was a patsy, quote unquote, because of the fact that I lived in the Soviet Union. Think of this: the United States and Russia and the world, they were in the throes of the Cold War, right?
Right.
So Russia was seen as, quote unquote, the enemy, just like, Iraq and Afghanistan, that kind of thing. What if someone were defected from Iraq or Afghanistan or from one of those countries and come over here? Well, I'm just a patsy because, the public sentiment and opinion is against me. He was saying he was a patsy because of the fact that I lived in the Soviet Union. So I that's one of the first ones I did was, I'm just a patsy. And I'm and patsy show hard block stress. The rest of the words don't.
Right.
So
versus,
he knew he was lying when he said he was a patsy, because he wasn't. He's being arrested because the president, not because he lived in the Soviet Union.
Right, sure. The thing is that, see, in voice stress analysis, because I worked for a company that sold them, and what I remember is you establish a baseline parameter that associated with a statement that's true. It has veracity. Here's the newspaper. Is that the New York Times? Yes, it is.
Right.
Good. Okay. It's right there. He can't lie. And even if he's stressed out, you establish a baseline parameter in that context of being under arrest. Give me an honest answer. And then they look at the other one. They ask him about, did he kill the president? Did he shoot anybody? I'm just a patsy. I live in the Soviet Union. And then that one, they see when I'm in a patsy, I'm just a patsy. Like you said, that's off the charts.
A great point you make. We can't do that kind of test with Oswald, of course. He's dead. So I specifically chose questions where I knew we could verifiably the answers. For example, being discharged as a buck sergeant. A policeman hit me. We all know that could be told, that it could be verified, either truthful or not truthful. So
Right.
I use that as my baseline to show researchers that not just I'm a patsy and I didn't shoot anybody, no sir, but because that could be subjective to some people, and it is subjective to some people. But we know that he was hit by a policeman, and that shows no stress. We know that he believed, that he studied Marx and Marxist principles, and he said, yes, I'm a Marxist. That came up, no stress. So we had these things, and I'm looking for another one that he was telling the truth. But so that's why that was my attempt to get a baseline to show how he was telling the truth. For example, like we told earlier about, no, I have not. Lying and telling the truth in the same sense. And we can verify that he was not charged with that until after the press conference. We know that.
Sure.